Hey everyone, Christina Simmons with Say Yes to Holiness here, and happy Christmas, Merry Christmas. We are still in the midst of this Christmas season, and even though the rest of the world kind of thinks it's over, but the fact is that it is the Christmas season. We have 12 12 days in order to be able to celebrate this wonderful, wonderful season. So one of the things I wanted to do was, to talk about what is this season all about? Well, why do we have a season for Christmas when the rest of the world is kind of like all done the day after Christmas, except for our English and Canadian and Australian friends who celebrate Boxing Day, which is actually December 26th. So it's like an extra holiday. But regardless, the fact is that we have a season, and we're given this season in the wisdom of our Mother Church to be able to reflect upon the great gift that we have been given. Because we prepared for an entire season of Advent. This year it was the shortest Advent ever, but again, this year we get to celebrate the fullness of the Christmas season. We get the whole Christmas season because this coming Sunday, we're going to celebrate the Feast of the Holy Family. And then the following Sunday, we celebrate Epiphany. Actually, a day after Epiphany, the 12th day, actually ends on January 6th, but we'll celebrate it on Sunday, January 7th. So we get the fullest Christmas that we could get, even though we had the shortest Advent ever. But we get to use this time in order to be reflecting again upon the great gift that we have been given. And that's why I wanted to talk about humility. Jesus showed us what humility is, starting from the very beginning in Bethlehem, of where he was born in humble circumstances. He was born in poverty. He was born without big fanfare, regardless of the fact that the angels came. Who'd they come to? They came to the shepherds. They came to those who nobody paid attention to. The shepherds were outcasts during their time, and the angels, they announced it to the shepherds, and the shepherds came and worshiped him. But the fact is that no one knew that the king, creator of the universe, had been born. And it wasn't until 3 wise men, or 3, astrologers, those who watched the stars and had followed the star, when they came through Herod's court asking directions for how they could come and adore the newborn king of the Jews, that the rest of the world, the secular world, had any inkling that Jesus had been born. So again, that sign of humility. No big fanfare, humble circumstances, born in poverty. And the fact is that we tend to look at humility as those things, as we can't be a big person in the world, that we can't be, living in a nice house, that we can't have these comforts that the world associates with being big and great and, popular. But true humility is within. In fact, humility is talked about by the saints and theological writers as the foundation upon which all the other virtues need to be rested. They need to be built upon humility. So by cultivating humility, we are able to become more like Christ. John the Baptist said it so beautifully when he said, "I must decrease and he must increase." And we have to strive to do this as well. So as we're coming to the end of a calendar year, but in the midst of this Christmas season, I want to jump on and to share 7 steps that can help you cultivate humility so that you can begin this new year, this new calendar year, with a true eye on Christ, so that you are able to become more like him throughout this next year of 2024. So what are those 7 steps? Well, the first is to desire humility and ask God for it. Desire it and ask God for it. God desires to give us nothing but good gifts, but we have to ask. So desire humility and ask him for it. The second is to foster docility, to practice being docile, easily directed by carrying out the advice that's received in your spiritual direction. To be docile is to be malleable. It's not to be weak-willed, but rather it is to allow your will to be directed in the proper way. And this especially is true in our spiritual direction. So when a spiritual director or your spiritual mentor gives you a suggestion, take it, to heart and to pursue it. I still remember when a couple of times when I've had a number of spiritual directors over the years, because I've moved in different places, and they've given me direction, which initially I might have resisted, but then pursued. And it's been life-changing for me in the aftermath of having, been docile, have been obedient to what it is that they asked me to do, carrying out the advice that they gave me. So what's the third step? Third step is to receive fraternal correction joyfully and thankfully. To be grateful that someone cared enough to point out a way in which you can become better, in which you can become more like Christ. Now, I know sometimes that fraternal correction can be very difficult to receive, and actually it might even be given in a cruel or almost heartless way. But to look at it as the Lord is using that person in order to help you be able to become more like him. So we should be joyful when we are corrected, and also thankful that God is using this person to be able to help us grow. Fourth is to accept any humiliations that come our way in silence for love of God. I often joke and say, because I struggle with humility, pride is a big thing for me that I struggle with. And I know that humility only comes through humiliations, and those are no fun. But the fact is that if we can accept these humiliations, these times when we're embarrassed, these times when we mess up, when we say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, even if it's out of good intentions, but to accept that humiliation in silence out of love for God, and to say, Lord, help me grow from this. Help me, because I love you, to be able to accept this in silence, to not complain about it, to not rail against it, but rather to accept it out of love for you. The fifth step is for us to practice obeying quickly and wholeheartedly. So when we are asked to do something, to do it quickly and to do it with all of our heart, soul, and mind. One of the biggest ways that we can model good Christian virtue is to be obedient, to be docile, to be, responding quickly and wholeheartedly to what is asked of us, especially those who are in a position of authority over us. God gives these people authority, and we have to trust that he will work through them. So through our obedience to quickly respond and to wholeheartedly respond is a way we grow in humility. Again, less of me, more of him. Number 6 is we can strive to grow, to attain this virtue of humility through works of mercy. When we are doing acts of charity, whenever we are serving others cheerfully, what happens is that we grow in humility because we're putting the needs of others before ourselves. Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta used to have this acronym that she'd talk about of joy. And we'd come to find joy by putting J, Jesus first, O, others next, and Y, yourself last. And that is how we find joy. In the same way, it helps us develop humility. And finally, we need to try to accept others as they are, patiently. And to do this, to look at them as the Lord sees them. And it's one of those things that is probably the most difficult, especially at this time of year when we see extended family and friends that we don't necessarily see, about those people that we might not necessarily choose to hang out with. But here's an opportunity to grow in humility by accepting them as they are, to do it with patience, not irritation or anger, but to do it patiently. And we can do this most easily by seeking to see them as the Lord does, and to know they are cherished, they are beloved as well, just as we are. It's hard when we don't get along with someone, or they do something or say something that is irritating to us for whatever reason. But the fact is that when we're able to accept them as they are and appreciate them for who they are, as a beloved son or daughter in particular, then we are growing in humility. So all of these 7 steps, desiring humility and asking God for it, to foster docility by carrying out advice, especially received in spiritual direction, to receive fraternal correction joyfully and thankfully, to accept humiliation in silence out of love for God, to obey wholeheartedly and quickly, to strive to grow in humility by caring for others through acts of charity, and finally, by striving to accept others as they are and see them as the Lord sees them. In all of these ways, you are able to grow in humility, and we are then able to be more fully models and witnesses of Christ's love in the world, so that they can experience, we can experience in particular, the love, the joy, the hope, and also the peace that comes with being in union with our Lord. And this is what Christmas is all about. This is the Christmas season. So experience it and celebrate it and grow in humility so that you can truly rejoice, and so that there can be less of you and more of him. And we can all joyful, we adore thee. We can adore him in the manger, and we can come to know of his great love for us, of his becoming like us so that he could be with us. So let's be with him, and let's grow in humility today. God bless. Know my continued prayers throughout this Christmas season.